Hey, greetings, folks. Welcome to the program. I'm Greg Willits from RosaryArmy.com.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
And we are joined in studio with a very special friend. We've had her on the program in the past, Emily Jaminet, excuse me, from WelcomeHisHeart.com. Joining us in studio. You're seeing this probably in June, but we filmed this months ago. That's why it's a secret. Emily's been here in Atlanta as we've been recording a very special learning path for our School of Mary. And I'm excited that we're able to finally do this. And we got to meet in person. We've had you on the show a couple times. Now here we are, all able to hang out. We've been hanging out for the last few days, and this is the last hurrah before you get in the rental car and go back to the airport.
Yeah, it's the last hurrah, and I love the studio. I'm a big fan of the studio. I just think that it's neat to see the podcast through the lens, and then to be here. And I have to say, it's not only that the camera or the studio. I love the feel of where this is being produced. There's warmth here. There's hospitality. There's kindness. These are people of great integrity. And so you guys.
Thank you.
Well, it's I signed the guest book. So that was my big highlight today. And it's just neat. We are the brothers and sisters in Christ. We are the body of Christ. And so when we get to come together and we have these interactions virtually, and then when we meet each other in person, I just kept telling my husband, it just feels like old friends. And that's the gift of a good podcast. What you're doing is you invite everyone to the table. It's we all get to sit there, but I did get to sit at the table.
What did your husband think of his wife getting on a plane and flying to Atlanta to go meet strangers and hang out at their house for a few days?
What's great is that he was very trusting as well, because I just said, I know these are the real deal. And I told him the plan, and he was like, all right, this sounds right.
This sounds sketchy.
This sounds good. But I was telling you earlier, I just wished he'd been here for this, because it's really a gift to be in your home and to be with you and to experience, like I said, every one of the things I've been really thinking about with this ministry at Welcome His Heart is our goal, our mission is to make hearts and homes that are transformed by Christ. And so when I'm here, I feel the attributes of the kingdom, the peace, the trust, the hope that everything will be reconciled through Christ. It doesn't mean it's perfect, guys. There are, all of us have issues in our relationships, but the kingdom lives here, and it's just, it's awesome.
I guess we did it okay. We live in a bubble, so we have to step out every now and then just to make sure, are we doing Catholicism right? I think we are. We're trying really hard to live it 24/7. And for us, for our family, going to Mass is the highlight of our week. And so we kind of do our best to live honorably, that Monday through Saturday, and just trying to do a good job of living what we heard in the homily the Sunday before and really challenging ourselves. But we feel very blessed to be in this line of work where we get to meet and collaborate with wonderful people such as yourself. And I love how we do have a bit of a history. We've been on each other's radars now for a few years, never imagining it would culminate to something as awesome as what we've accomplished quite recently in getting that course for School of Mary, sort of getting all the production behind that course so that more people can enthrone their homes. So tell us a little bit about Enthronement.
Sure.
We have our audience here for Adventures, and they may have not heard the term. It sounds super imposing. What is this? Greg and Jennifer, you already talked about consecration. I'm still warming up to that word. Now you're throwing enthronement at me. What's happening? So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can give us a little bit of that spiel.
And tell us a little bit about Welcome His Heart in that answer.
Yeah. My personal family, I'm a mother of 7 children. I've been married to John for 25 years. And I remember, 10 years ago, we did the enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the loving nag of my parents. If you just put Jesus as king of your family. And I remember thinking, Mom, life is fine. Life is good. I don't know why we need to do this. So we had our own hesitations right in our own home. But then the sentimental side kicked in. I thought, well, the day after Thanksgiving, when the house is still clean and the nice things, the niceties are still out, we could enthrone Jesus and Mary. And so we have these 2 old images, and So we had them ready, and we invited my husband's parents were in town, my parents were in town, and we came together. And I remember saying the prayers of consecration, the prayers of enthronement, and like, okay, Lord, now what was really my thought. Like, what are you going to do now? And who would have ever thought, welcome is hard, that I would be serving as the national director? I just thought it was a good thing. And what I realized is I got an opportunity to live it and to see what happens when Jesus gets to come into our home. So when we look at scripture, I first think of Psalm 103. He's enthroned on high for all generations. He wants to be the king of your home for all generations, like your grandkids, your great-grandkids. He wants them to all know that he wants to be welcomed. But he has to be welcomed. Our free will is really important. Our homes are like, I remember you were saying in the course of some of our dialogue, like our own little worlds are our homes. They're no longer, just the world of what city we live in or what parish we go to, but literally our home, each bedroom could be its own entity itself. So by welcoming Jesus through the enthronement, you are saying, like, Jesus, come into our home, like he knocks on the door in Revelation. Like, we have to participate. So welcome his heart is an extension. And in the course, I go through a lot of history of St. Margaret Mary, and Jesus wants the image exposed and honored, and to counter things such as Jansenism and heresy. But it's also the spiritual protection. It's the commitment. It's uniting your will with God's will and saying, like, we want this to be a holy home. Like, we want this here, and we don't want darkness to be able to fester. We don't want secrets here that we don't even know are going on, especially as parents, or to those who live alone. We don't want the spirit of loneliness to penetrate, the elderly at that point in their life, or if you do live alone. So it's been a great adventure. We are an imperfect family. I'm an imperfect Catholic, but I do have a dream that every single Catholic home will not only be a place where Jesus is welcomed, but the image of the Sacred Heart is allowed to be on the wall in a predominant place, and absolutely include the Blessed Mother as well. Why not bring his mother, consecrate your heart. And that's why I think this collaboration is just really, really beautiful.
And that, the collaboration, I think what makes it special, is your microphone falling?
It's okay. I think I got it.
What makes the consecration special, and what makes home enthronement special, and then now this collaboration between our two apostolates special, is because it happens so organically and over time and safely. I can't fix it if it's fallen.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good.
I don't want you to have to sit there and hold it for the next 45 minutes.
She might have to. But
I might.
okay.
Let's just do this. Well, I'm offering it up. If you offer it up, you get grace. So
what were you saying about how much you enjoy the studio and how impressed you've been by the studio and the
as long as Mary doesn't fall over, we're doing
the
great.
things that are falling apart.
Right.
She's just sitting there kind of holding her heart and laughing at you right now. Go ahead and hold that microphone with your wrist. No, but the collaboration happened organically, and those are always the best things, right? So it wasn't a forced thing, and I think it also happened very prayerfully. I said this earlier to you that the first time we had you on the show, which was a couple of years ago, it was for your first book. And after we had you on there, and we were still talking before we hung up, but it wasn't a part of the interview. We said, it feels like there's some connection that could easily be made between home enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and our work with Rosary Army plus total consecration. And we hadn't yet given birth to the idea of School of Mary and the learning platform and everything that came from that. But then when we had you on the show again last year, and we were doing the video versions of it, and same thing happened after we hung up finished the actual interview. We started talking. It's like, well, what would it actually take for this to happen? And I can't remember exactly what month we had you on or where we were. School of Mary might have just launched. I think we had just put on the total consecration resources. And I said it again, what if you just came down here and we filmed it and we put together a course, and that idea seemed to resonate with you. You went back to your board, and we went back and forth for a while on emails, just trying to figure out, well, when can we make it happen? And just like anything that is of God, when it's God's time, everything falls together and put it into place. And that's really what it feels like happened just now. It's like this was just the right week for you to fly down, just the right week for us to be able to focus on this. We're finishing up some other projects. We're able to fit this in. We have enough time so that we can finish this before June, when people are seeing this now. We can get all the pieces together. And then what was really neat for me to see is how well we were able to collaborate at the last minute as we're going through and realizing, what's needed right here is more information on this. Well, let's put together a video on that and film that part and put that together. And it grew into something where we have, I think, over 25 components now into this learning path, so that it's something that we're able to put on School of Mary. It's a partnership with welcomehisheart.com. It takes what we've already done with total consecration to Jesus through Mary, which is we are giving ourselves to Jesus through his mother, and now we are enthroning the homes through the Sacred Heart enthronement. So we've given ourselves to Jesus and Mary, all of our possessions, all that we have, all of our good works, and now we're giving the home and allowing Jesus to take reign and have a place of prominence in the home. And those two things made so much sense to bring together. And so as we were working on this and we're making those videos and putting it together, now we have this learning pathway on School of Mary that is beyond what I think any of us imagined when we first started having this conversation. We thought, well, maybe we'll come down, you'll read the prayers, we'll show I didn't really know where it was going to go. Yeah. And you were able to provide a history of the Sacred Heart, greater depth of the Sacred Heart, the pioneers of home enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, all of the different blessings and promises of the Sacred Heart, the ways that you as a family or individually, or if you're single, can enthrone the Sacred Heart into your homes, overcoming all the questions that people may have about it. Well, this isn't my permanent home, so I'm not ready yet, or all the excuses people come up with. You countered all of that. We were able to do some roundtable conversations. We're able to create some downloadable resources, and it's really a very robust thing that, again, I don't think that we could have done it without Jesus and Mary taking the lead on this.
Isn't this fun? Because as you started, you thought it was about a rope rosary, right? Mm-hmm. I just need to get a rope rosary. Mm-hmm. I need to get rosaries into hands. Mm-hmm. For me, when I first took this over, I thought it was just about assembling a kit and putting it in the mail, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time it was like, okay, this is what I have to do. I have an assemble kit and put in the mail. But what you realize, it's like a ball of string. When you unwind it, there's so much more. And in 20 years, we could be sitting here talking about the exact same subject matter, total consecration to Mary, which my husband and I did within like the first month of our marriage.
Yeah.
Because we knew we needed Mary.
Yeah.
We needed St. Louis de Montfort's total consecration. And we've renewed that throughout the course of our marriage. But now I'm like, we need Jesus as king of our home because there's so much going on in this little tiny kingdom of our home. And darkness can seep in like with the flicker of a light almost, that movie or the depression or the anxiety or the career concerns that we all have, or, caring for our loved ones or forgiveness, or like, this is where the kingdom's lived out. So as you talked about going to Sunday Mass, it's like, that's the food for the week, but the home is where it's like tried and true and tested. And so it's just a beautiful thing how the Lord has given us these missions, these apostolates that are, they're reasonable enough for us to dedicate the rest of our life to this mission, but big enough that our vision is every Catholic.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
both have
Yeah.
huge vision,
Right.
great idea. Now, how do we do it? We have to have courses. We have to have resources. We have to explain over and over again the basic concepts, the obstacles, the stories, the testimonies, Joe Schmo, everyone. This is for everyone, not just for the perfect and the pious and no, Jesus came for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, what I loved about learning about all the history and really getting to unpack what enthronement means is that it forces me to look at my home differently and recognizing that it is a type of kingdom. And we as homeowners, we naturally try to assume the role of king and queen. If you're like husband and wife in a home, that's what you're kind of doing. You're the king of your own castle, and we decorate accordingly. We try to have, nice exteriors if we can afford it, nice interiors to the level of our income. We want to reflect this nice little kingdom of our design, and then we are living up to that role. Like, well, I want my bedroom just like this because I am the homeowner. I own this. This is my master bedroom. I mean, even the words we use sort of play into this idea of a kingdom. And so if you haven't yet enthroned, I think you need to acknowledge that there is already a king in the home that likely needs to be dethroned to make room for the true king. And so it forces you to look at who's the king, and is it a good one? Is it holy? Is it God? And where is he? Is he really the center of this house or not? And sometimes that's a confronting question, and you have to deal with the truth of the home that you've built up to this point.
And a lot of times what the tragedy, right, is when a marriage comes crashing down. A lot of times I will think, and I'm sure you think this, I had no idea. I had no idea they were struggling. If I only knew, I would have told them about a marriage resource. I would have prayed with them. I would have prayed for them. And the truth is that if you don't have the king as the head of your castle, the head of your home, and I love to think about it is we're kingdom building, right? Home by home, house by house, school by school, parish by parish. Like, he wants to give you grace long before crisis is there, because the king of darkness, he's so subtle, right? It begins with a chuckle, a laugh at something inappropriate. It begins with the darkness. But the king of light sheds light on everything. So long before there's really even crisis, he wants to keep us on the path leading to heaven.
Can you explain how this enthronement is for all the family members, even the ones who aren't actively living in the house? I think that there's some real comfort to that, as there are a lot of listeners to our program who unfortunately have this reality of an adult child who has fallen away from the faith, and they're just like, what do I do? How do I help this kid come back to the sacraments? Can you talk about how enthronement even is a benefit in those situations?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And we talked about a little bit. I remember later in the day, we said consecration is about changing your heart, right? We consecrate to Mary. We can consecrate our heart to Sacred Heart. But enthronement comes from that very word, and he's placed on the throne, right? So if you look up the word enthronement, you would see a lot of Indian ceremonial procedures begin with enthronement, or the enthronement of a king, right? When there was a monarchy. So he does get that predominant place, and it fulfills one of the direct promises where Jesus said he wanted where his heart is exposed and honored, you shall be blessed. So we're fulfilling a request by Jesus. I love when my dad gets excited about this. He's like, we're doing what Jesus said for us to do. To St. Margaret Mary in 1670. He's like, we're doing it. Put the image up. We're doing it. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is, when we look at the words of Joshua, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Somebody has to say the words, as for me and my house. Someone has to open the door to allow grace to come. And what's beautiful is we're not talking about replacing sacraments, which are given to us by our priests and Mother Church. We're talking about letting the light in our home. So one person says those words. Sometimes both married couples are on the same page. Sometimes that husband is in the other room. My parents were telling me that they were witnessing an enthronement, and you can accompany other people in their enthronements. The two of you might be, sitting at someone's house witnessing their enthronement. Let us, if someone's in a crisis, say, you want to do the enthronement? We'll be there to help you. We want to walk with you in this spiritual practice. But it's just, my mom and dad were telling me a story that they were there, and, the dad decided to take the kids to the gym. They went to the gym, and the mom said, my husband's gone. The kids are at the gym. He took them, and they said, let's welcome Jesus, right? You need Jesus more because dad is undermining the faith directly, indirectly. And part of it is giving her the grace and the tools, but giving the family an opportunity to have a faith encounter in the home. So it can be as complicated as that situation. It could just be a teenage child that doesn't want to participate, that's up in the bedroom. but everyone knows Jesus is allowed to be the king here. If his picture, and I did an event one time, and the woman, very dignified woman, said, I don't have permission to hang things on my wall. My husband would be very upset. We've hired decorators, and it's just to the liking. And I said, you want to take this prayer card and put it in a frame? And can you put it in your office? Can you put it in your kitchen? Can you put it, just a breakthrough, getting that image in. So he wants to pour out his grace. The image is important because it softens our heart, because when we look at his heart and we understand his heart is full of love with no barriers, it begins to work on our relationship. He wants us to have a heart to heart.
Yeah.
He wants to meet you right where you're at. You don't straighten up and get pious and perfect to have a relationship with Christ. No, he wants you on your knees saying, our family's a mess. This home is struggling. We are in financial disarray. We're dealing with drug addictions of our kids. We're dealing with alcoholism. We're dealing with all of it. And St. Margaret, Jesus said to her in the 1670s, he said he wants to take our disordered passions and put them in order. So that's what happens when the king comes. And we see that in the scripture. There's order in the vineyard. There's order in the home. There's a sense of renewal. And that's what we want for every Catholic. Every Catholic needs that. And lastly, why am I passionate? Because when I look into history, this is what families did. In sickness and war and poverty and whatever it was, Jesus was king, right? Even lastly, I received a letter in the mail in all Spanish. So I can't speak Spanish. So what do? You give it to your teenage daughter to take to the lunch table. And I said, because one of the girls was fluent, I said, could you have her try to read this letter? Now, the interesting thing was it went to our ministry website, and the return address was a jail down in the South. And it was from a penitentiary federal jail. So then I was like, this is even more interesting. But this gentleman had read an article I wrote and some of those great Catholic resources that go into our jails. And he said, the letter basically said, I grew up in a small town in Ecuador, and every one of us had an image of the Sacred Heart and Immaculate Heart. And he said, and we even had dirt floors, but it didn't matter. And he wrote this from jail. He said, keep doing what you're doing, because we were different, because Jesus and Mary was in all the homes. And then imagine the teenage girls in their uniforms at Catholic school, like, what does your mom do again?
Wow. Yeah, the witnessing to them.
Yeah, they were witness.
Is there a time where it started to fall off sharply on the timeline? Was it the 60s, 70s? Like, when did it start to really be noticeably less dominant in the homes?
That's such a great question. We were really on a crusade in America. You can look up men of the Sacred Hearts. Parishes had representatives. These men were there to witness to the enthronement. How do we get it? Through the materials, through accompaniment. There was a whole army of individuals in the 1950s.
There was a what?
An army.
What?
Like a rosary army. And then in the 1950s, they had rallies, about for the enthronement, and Father Mateo was still circling the globe. And as you talked about these pioneers, there was great leadership from the order, the congregation of Sacred Heart and Mary, the two hearts. But it kind of like really good things, these treasures get kind of hidden and forgotten to why. Why do we do what we do? And maybe we just took it for granted, because Father Stosh Daly, one of the first talks I heard him say is he said he thinks it happened when the home be first and foremost. He said we took religious items out of the home, and then we took religious items out of the churches. But he said it was the homes were no longer places of mini worship. The homes became beautiful.
Was it the homes first, though? Because I would actually think it was
the school.
When the churches started watering things down, why should you? Yeah. Why should you have it at home?
Well, right? that's a good point. It was the removal of, and this correlation.
Yeah.
When people stopped having items in their home, and I hate to say it, but if I say Jesus is more the king of the thrift store than he is in most homes.
Because you see more.
you see all of it,
Yeah.
all the
Jesus
beautiful
items.
things.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
our images came from an antique mall,
Mm-hmm.
and the beautiful framed images that were once a part of a very predominant Catholic high school in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
It's like, how did these end up in a
Yeah.
thrift store?
Yeah.
But they get predominant place in my home.
One of the things I've been thinking about this week, since we've been working on the learning pathway, is we have an image of the Immaculate Heart in our bedroom, and when I wake up in the morning and I'm laying on my left side, I look at it, right. I see Mary. It was a painting I did years ago, and when we were setting things up in the house, we're like, well, let's put it there. It's like it was sort of an afterthought, and I'm embarrassed to say that, to put it in that particular spot. But this week I've really been longing for. We don't have an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in there. And when
Yeah.
I'm looking over, we have a crucifix right above that image of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and it's a beautiful crucifix that we have in our bedroom. But I want to see Jesus pointing towards his Sacred Heart, and I've had a great longing for it this week, and in great part just because this is all we've been talking about all week long.
We have been talking.
has been the Sacred Heart. So, but it's a beautiful thing, and I think the reason why I kind of share that is because we took a step 10 years ago and did a home enthronement, and I painted a painting that we've had hung up for the last 10 years, but the way Jesus acts in so many things, and we've said this week several times as well, of how meek he is and how easy his yoke is, he's not going to, even if you commit to an enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in your house, he's not going to necessarily say, all right, everything's going to come to an end. And he's not a dictator. He's a loving king. And he's going to lead us gently down his path. He's going to teach us how to be meek because he's meek. He's going to teach us how to love because he's love. And he teaches us as we're able to accept it. And over time, we're able to accept more, I think. And so we have to begin somewhere. And what an easy thing it is to say a prayer and to give prominence to an image. And that's all you have to do to start down the pathway to putting on that yoke that he wants to have you wear that is easier, and to act in the ways that he wants us to act so that we can be more like him. And it really is just, even in our thoughts, right? I mean, as I said this week, as I've been laying in bed before I get up and start working, I find myself imagining the Sacred Heart of Jesus and next to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and saying, okay, I don't want my ideas and my thoughts of my to-do lists to take precedence here. I need the two of you to lead me here, because I know whatever the two of you lead me to do this week is going to be infinitely greater than anything that I'm going to be able to do on my own, or any of the priorities that I think are the most important. And again, I've ended up focusing on many things this week as we've been working on this learning path that I never had planned for. We've had some surprises happen with like, this will work better than this. Basically what I'm saying is they very much will show up. And I think just this week, in trying to produce this learning path, we've seen them showing up because this is what they do. Mm-hmm. But they wait for us to open up the invitation for them to come in before we can do those kinds of things.
I often wondered, why the heart? Like, out of all the organs in the body, what's so unique about this organ, this heart of ours? And I asked that question to a priest many years ago, and he says, well, if you look at how the Jewish culture regarded the heart, it was the center of everything. It was like the totality of one's being, where all of your focus, it was all considered and contained within the heart. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's a pretty powerful definition to operate from. And I think that's one that we need to embody that more, and realize that if you try to put yourself in God's heart, you're like the center. You're like, your importance is elevated, because we forget who we are. I think it forces you to look at how loved you are by God. And I think that we just forget how loved we actually are. And sometimes we don't love ourselves. And so our hearts are just so dirty right now. And we have to go to confession more and always try to understand and figure it out. And it's like, okay, my heart belongs to you, Lord. That means my everything. I got to surrender it all. I got to give it to you because God isn't going to take anything from us. But he's like, will you give it to me? Will you give it to me? Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay.
Well, and
Here, you take
he
it.
actually had heart exchanges with some of the saints, right? St. Margaret Mary talks about
yes.
not just resting her head, which she was allowed to do, on Jesus's chest, hearing his heartbeat. St. Gertrude the Great had that same experience. But like literally, like give me. Sometimes my prayers, give me one cell,
Yeah.
because I think if I had one of your cells, which obviously we get to receive the Holy Eucharist, but
Right.
my heart, is where everything good, bad comes from, right? Like it's the beating core. So the sensitivity, I want to be sensitive to God. I don't want to be prideful. I don't want to be hard-hearted. And the scriptures just continue to talk about the importance of the heart, because that's where the kingdom is. We all look so different. We can live all around the world in all these different cultures, but he wants to be the king of our heart. And every heart looks the same.
Yeah.
I love it.
Here's the thing. I don't want us to go too much more deeply into this. And I'm going to actually cut this episode shorter than normal.
Okay.
Because I want people to start down the process of enthroning their homes and giving their lives over to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And so we've created this learning path. It's available right now for free on schoolofmary.com. There should be nothing stopping you from doing it. You sign up for School of Mary. That's free. You watch some orientation videos just so that you learn how to get the most out of the platform. That'll take a few minutes. But then right after that, you're going to have full access to all of the Sacred Heart materials that we've created this week with welcomehisheart.com. And you have access to all the total consecration resources and everything else. But if you have not yet enthroned your home to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, this is an easy way to get started. And I wish I had this when we did it. When I had all the questions of the priest who told us to enthrone the image, I was like, well, I don't understand why, but okay. I feel like we've answered so many questions for people, and this course it's not just a course. I feel like it's been a retreat for all of us as well, creating it, and I feel like it's going to be a guided retreat for you as well if you go through this. And so it's a beautiful resource, Emily. We're so glad that you listened to the Holy Spirit. I'm glad that the Holy Spirit brought us all together to be able to do this, and it's just a blessing. That was 2 years in the making that we would partner Rosary Army and Welcome His Heart, and it just made so much sense. And I'm so happy because now I can see the fruit of all of it. And a lot of times we're like, we're hopeful. We can see it now. We just did it. We saw what Jesus and Mary did, and it's amazing.
We just had to say yes.
Yeah. And so
And I
let's
just
just
want
do
to
it.
thank everyone that's invested into Rosary Army and allowing School of Mary to be that platform.
Yeah.
Because I think it's part of, a lot of times, our tithe, our gifts, we can say, I don't really understand. How did we get here? What are they doing? I mean, this is an unbelievable gift. And for me in a ministry, to be able to partner and to be here and to give people, because I can't be in your home when you're doing the enthronement. We don't have enough quote unquote missionaries. We can pray for you. We will pray for you. We will answer your questions. But if you go through this course, you will be empowered to let the King of Kings into your home and to experience spiritual transformation. So couldn't be any more excited. I want to, again, thank everyone for allowing this partnership to happen and give us the feedback, right? We want to know what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
And they can do that in the community after they've gone through it. There'll be areas for people to actually communicate with other people who are doing the enthronement so they can share their stories. And it's a great blessing. So go check that out. Please don't delay. Schoolofmary.com. You can also check out Emily's website, welcomehisheart.com, where you can order the different resources and have them sent to you, or you can download them from the website. And of course, if you want a free rosary, we're able to hook you up with that as well over at rosaryarmy.com. And so, Emily, thank you for being here in our home, in our studio, and being here this week. It's just been great. And thank you to you for being here. And make sure that you're praying your rosary every single day.
And do whatever it takes to be holy.
God bless. We'll talk to you in a few days, folks.